Hi there, and welcome to the Plugged In Show. I'm Paul Acey. I might want to issue a quick warning right up front. We are going to be talking about a sensitive topic, and that topic is sex. How movies and the entertainment industry deal with it, and how we as parents can fight that influence in our homes and in our families. Obviously, this is going to be a delicate conversation. We're going to be straying into some areas that might be a little uncomfortable for whole family listening or viewing, but it's also an incredibly important one too, because Hollywood's influence in this area has never been stronger. And speaking of strong influences, video games are pretty powerful too. I'd imagine that some of you and your kids are still playing through a big game that landed under your Christmas tree. I know that I am, actually. But the gaming industry never stops, and a whole bunch of new, highly anticipated games are rolling out this year, with a few huge names actually coming out in February and in March. Our gaming expert, Bob Hoos, will give us a sneak preview on what's to come and what parents might want to keep an eye out for. It promises to be a pretty full podcast, and to help us, Bob and I are joined by our two favorite Californians, Jonathan McKee here in studio, actually, and Adam Holtz. Welcome, guys.
Nice. Yeah.
Newly
welcome.
transplanted
Good to be
California.
That's right.
Yeah, we did a swap.
How the tables have turned.
My, how the turntables. Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
it's music we're talking about.
No,
I see.
yeah, let's do that.
yeah, we'll just segue into music. Actually, let's continue to talk about video games as we dive into our icebreaker.
Okay.
As every gamer knows, there is such a thing as a boss in a game. You have these big bosses that you have to get by to win the game or even to go on to a next level. And some of them can be particularly vexing. I want to know... Vexing. I want to know...
Good word.
If you can tell me if you're a gamer, tell me about the boss that is giving you the most nightmares. And if you're not a gamer... just tell me the worst boss that you've ever worked with besides me.
The worst boss.
Can I start?
Yes, you may, Adam.
Please do.
So I'm going to date myself horrifically, but the one that came to mind was a robot boss in the arcade game Zaxxon in 1982. And I don't know how much money I spent trying to beat that boss, but I probably could have bought my own Zaxxon with the amount of money it took. You know, back in the day, we didn't have an Atari. We didn't have anything. There was no Nintendo. There was no video games at home. Well, unless you were playing Pong with Bob, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I know you had Pong.
I did.
But anyway, that robot boss in Zaxxon just about caused me to lose my little adolescent mind.
And for younger gamers who are going, what does he mean?
Zaxxon?
What is he talking about? Losing money? What? See,
You used to have to
there used to
pay,
be
yeah.
arcades where you put a quarter in a
Right.
machine and play.
It's like it's like an in-game purchase, only you
That's
did it
right.
on the front end.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
They're like, what's a quarter?
Well, I would say, see, when you first brought this up, I was thinking of the 2019 Samurai game but you know, as I was thinking about it, the fact is, I think any Souls-like game, period, every boss in a Souls-like game, and by the way, what that means, it's referring to games that, well,
Very intentionally difficult.
back in like 2011, I think Dark Souls is when it first came out. And it's a game that's designed to be incredibly difficult, where just about any character that you're battling is going to kill you at least a dozen times before you even figure out, what am I doing wrong? And I hate these games, to be honest, but some people really love them. But literally in those games, any boss you play is excruciating. And so that would have to be my answer.
Yeah. What about you, Jonathan?
Well, I'm not a gamer, but my experience was much like Adam's in the arcade. And literally, this is probably not even a boss, but it's just a bad guy who constantly beat me. I loved Qbert. And I put many a quarter into Qbert.
Oh,
and I
man.
think especially because when you die, when you hop off the edge and it goes, and click, and there was like a click at the bottom of the game, right? Do
Right.
you remember that?
When
there was
Hubert I
when
remember.
he would drop off the edge, there was a click by your foot, and you're like, "What? This is amazing!" And but he had like these two guys that would come on the scene, and they just moved kind of haphazardly, and they'd be like, and like it was like almost like back masking was their voice and stuff, and their names were like, I think, Wrong Way and Ugh. And they were horrible.
Wrong Way
yeah,
and Ugh.
literally, and it was like they were terrifying, and I'd be like,
Okay, Jonathan.
yeah,
Jonathan. I'm going to give you so much credit here. It's going to blow everybody's minds. I just fact checked you while you were talking. Wrong Way and Ugh. That's what they're actually named.
that's right. They're purple, right?
And not that I doubted you, but still.
Well,
I just wanted to be sure.
as I was saying, younger listeners are thinking, how old are these people? How old are they? They're playing what game? In what
So,
century
Jonathan-
is this?
One of the best family vacations we ever had.
Yeah.
We went to a hotel that had a broken Cubert, and I don't know that they knew that it was broken, but you didn't have to put money in it.
Oh,
and I literally played. I walked in as a Cubert novice, and I walked out
as an
as
expert.
like the master because I spent a week straight playing free Cubert at the hotel. And it was
So, Adam, can you make the sound effects as good as Jonathan?
yeah, exactly.
No,
Everybody
I
falls off
can't.
the edge. yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Paul.
wow.
All right.
People think we're not fun. We
So-
are.
That's right.
So I was actually going to go Skyrim, but I think after hearing you guys recollect about the old arcade days, I think I'm going to go back into my past and talk about the time when I brought $5 worth of quarters to a video arcade. Played
That's
for
20
an
quarters.
hour after school, came home, was grouchy as anything.
Donkey Kong.
No. It was like Tempest was one of them. Joust was another one. I
Oh,
really loved all
Tempest with those spikes. The spikes.
The spikes, they were my nemesis, right? But I get home and I'm grouchy because I didn't win any of the games. I was terrible at those games. And my mom says, wow, these video games made you really, really grumpy. You are never playing, you are never going to the arcade again. So my mom
Never.
was the killer boss of video games.
There you go. There you go.
That is awesome.
And you learned to
and
never
thankfully,
complain.
you didn't kill her.
No, but I did, like, when you're talking about Cubert, I never played it because I wasn't allowed to go to the arcade. So,
Oh my goodness.
so
Paul, I just feel like maybe we need to have an intervention about your childhood.
That's
All
right.
of these stories are so sad. I mean, it explains a
made
great deal,
my
frankly.
own Star
but-
Wars toys. I couldn't play
Golly.
video games. I had led a sad childhood. So this is going to be a little bit of a difficult transition point into our next conversation piece here, but we do need to sort of talk a little bit about the topic of intimacy and sex within the world of entertainment. The Christian theologian Augustine tells us that evil is nothing more than God's good gifts twisted, and sex might just be example 1A of that.
That's good.
God intended for sex to be one of God's most beautiful gifts, a way that man and woman can be drawn ever closer together. But through our own sinful natures, through our own desires, we've twisted that gift into ever so many ways. And we see that twisting all the time on our screens, right? It is more pervasive perhaps now than ever before. And if you look at the Oscar nominations, we see plenty of evidence. So it's really interesting how Hollywood deals with sex, because on one hand, they sort of make it look like it is the end all be all. Sex is what we are all casting out for. But they also make it look as if it's just this throwaway thing that we can do with anyone, anytime, anywhere we want. And they want it both ways, which is really fascinating. Adam, you have teens in your house right now. You are probably dealing with the sex in entertainment on a different level than most of us. Tell me a little bit about that experience, and tell me if there is one aspect of the sexualization that we see in entertainment that might worry you more than anything else.
Boy, there's so much we could say here, but let me dive in and just say something that I think is pretty important here. Back in the day, and that can be as far back as you want it to be, but certainly with our parents, I think there was an idea that you had the birds and bees conversation if you were really a good parent, right? And then you were done. You checked the box. It was over. You had one uncomfortable conversation with your kids and you were out. And a lot of, so many of my friends never even had one uncomfortable conversation. There was never a conversation.
Yeah.
I think what I want to say now is that our culture is having a conversation about sex 24/7. And I would broaden it beyond just Hollywood to the entertainment industry across the board, whether we're talking shows aimed at kids, whether we're talking explicit movies, whether we're talking romance as a theme in music, even video games. I mean, you can't find a place where sexuality is not permeating it. And so my takeaway and my answer to your question is we as parents have got to be willing to step into an ongoing conversation. It's not a one and done thing. And what I found with my kids, and my girls are 14 and 16, my son is 18, is that the more you talk about it, the less weird it gets. It just becomes, oh, we can talk about this. And, my kids will ask me questions. One time, about a year ago, one of my daughters asked me, why do guys like porn so much? And I don't know that she would have asked me that question if we hadn't had that ongoing conversation. So that's where I would start our conversation here, is that we don't have to be afraid of it. As you said, it's something that God has created for a specific means and a specific context, that being marriage, and it reflects our creation in his image. But the culture has taken it and distorted it, and we have to combat that, and it's going to require talking to our kids.
So is that a tough sell now when you're talking about we're saving sex for marriage? Is that becoming increasingly harder to talk to about with your kids, that message? Is it harder really to... Go ahead.
Well, I don't think so, because I think that if we're talking about the purpose and place of sexuality, I think that our conversation has to go deeper than God says premarital sex is bad, right? I think that we have to help our kids understand that God has created this with a specific purpose, and when that purpose is violated, there are relational, emotional, and spiritual consequences. So I think if we can do that, it helps them understand that context.
And we're talking about much more than just sex. I mean, the fact is that just general relationships have changed and shifted over the years.
Yeah.
And I think to a great extent, we as parents, not only are we to blame in a sense for why kids are turning to entertainment for their information, but we're just as impacted by that entertainment ourselves. So in a way, the whole culture, including parents who are supposed to be the wise ones, have been sort of twisted a bit by this information that we're getting from entertainment. And if we don't step up and start talking and saying the right things and at least asking the right questions, then it's going to continue to perpetuate. Yeah. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, if you stop and think about it, back in the 1930s when they had the Hays Code, because we're talking about it from the perspective of Hollywood, back when the Hays Code came into being, it was designed to sort of protect society in a way, so you didn't see this stuff on screen. And the Hollywood community itself said, okay, we're going to put rules in place so that you don't bug us anymore. And we're going to put these rules in place to sort of protect marriage and protect relationships. And then there was a certain point in like the 60s into the 70s where all of that sort of fell away. And now Hollywood is basically promoting the exact opposite of what they were trying to protect in the 1930s, because that was as our world shifts and we become more pornified. I mean, because when you stop and think about it, what are the relationships that Hollywood is promoting now? They're all in a way connected to this pornification of our world, and they're telling these lies that that we don't protest against. We sort of live with.
That's a really, really important point. And it sort of gets back to what you were talking about at the very beginning of this conversation, Adam, where you have this pornification of culture, and you have these really powerful messages that movies, television shows, music, they're pushing, and those messages never stop. As parents, I think, and I know I was guilty of this, as parents, I think we can be scared of those conversations. But it's so critical to have them, because if the entertainment industry does not stop giving us those messages, what are we doing to combat them?
Yeah.
Our silence doesn't help anything.
No, not at all.
It's just, if we just leave a void, it's going to be filled by some sort of ignorance.
Right.
And the thing is, it goes back to what was originally said in this podcast is, sex is this good thing that God created. And honestly, a lot of what we're seeing in the culture is a distortion of it.
Right.
It's not, and here's where parents got to be really careful, because sometimes we ricochet to this complete polar reaction of, let's turn off that screen. Why? Because there's filthy sex in it. And our message is sex is bad, sex is wrong, and our kids are kind of confused, like, well, that's really weird, because my friends seem like it's pretty cool. All my social media, people I follow think it's pretty cool. Everybody thinks it's cool, but my parents sure are weird because they say it's evil and bad. But yet I think they did it because I'm here. So what is this weird thing? It's a confusing message. And that's where, in a world so full of explicit lies, we need to not be scared to share the explicit truth. And I think sometimes parents are like, well, what do I share? This is where we need to be in the scripture. And scripture is pretty clear about it. And not so much like the book of Leviticus scripture of do not, right, but kind of like God's cool plan for marriage and what it looks like. And honestly, when we're seeing maybe an imitation of that on a TV show, not just being like, what is this bad stuff? But like when it fade to black moments, hopefully are the shows that we'd be watching, maybe being able to talk about that.
Yeah.
Hey, is this, when is sex okay? When do you know that you're with someone that you shouldn't have sex?
That's a great word with. That's a great
asking
word.
some questions.
Well, and I think one of the other parallel things is that we largely saw mainstream culture begin to depart radically from a Christian worldview in the late 1960s. And I know there was sin before the late 1960s. I'm not dumb.
A little bit,
right?
Yeah.
But at least in American culture, we had a largely Judeo-Christian worldview that had certain ideas and mores. And in the late 60s, we began to veer from that. And we're at a place now where mainstream culture has completely thrown God out the window. But, Blaise Pascal talks about the God-shaped void in our hearts. Mm-hmm. We are created for transcendent relationship with God. And if we throw that out the window, we're going to look for substitutes. Mm-hmm. And I think for most people, sex is going to be in that category of substitute. And so again, helping our kids understand that your friends may be looking for, and people in Hollywood and people in entertainment, they are looking for a transcendent experience that ultimately sex tantalizes in the wrong context, but it's not going to deliver on it. It's going to deliver heartbreak, and it's going to deliver consequences that Hollywood, frankly, often doesn't show.
Let me riff on that a little bit, because I think that's a really profound point. When you're talking about sort of this sexualization of the culture, and what you were talking about, Bob, the pornification, when you look at sort of that celebration of sex, it strikes me that a lot of it is about commoditizing us. We are our bodies. We are ourselves. If we don't look a certain way, we're not going to be loved. We're not going to be desired. All that kind of stuff, right? In some ways, when you're talking about this, and maybe when you're talking about it with your kids, the ideas that are being promoted by entertainment, they make us less than who we are. We are a product. We're a commodity. And what God designs in sex is to make us more, to make us better, to connect us with people more, and I think that that's an important message to get across.
But we need to reemphasize the whole aspect of not turning away from this entertainment. I mean, totally. I mean, sure, there's some entertainment.
Yeah,
we can
you definitely want to
turn
turn
away.
some stuff off.
But I'm saying that well, like you were speaking about your parents, where you came home grumpy from a video game. They said no more video games. Well, I mean, I understand that mentality. It's really easy to say, okay, no more.
Right.
You don't watch, we don't look, we blind ourselves to whatever's coming out. But the fact is that the best way that we, as we've been talking about this around the table, the best way that we can connect with kids is by experiencing some of this entertainment ourselves. And as Jonathan was saying, sort of using that as an illustration of, well, why doesn't
Right.
it work? Why do people that are so immersed in this end up generally being sad?
That is a really good point. And I do think when we're talking about what we try to do at Plugged In, I think that there are always two prongs, right? You want to say there are some things that you say no to. You just say
Right.
no. But we come back time and time again to the idea that when you do give a qualified yes, talk through it. Even when you're talking about how sort of these images, these scenes that we see, even pretty tame images, like growing up with James Bond. I've shared this on the podcast before.
Yeah.
I learned what it meant to be cool by watching James Bond. Having some conversations about, is that cool? Why does it attract you? What makes this appealing to you? Those are important conversations to have with your kids.
And one thing
Yeah.
that's nice about asking questions is, I mean, if I could go back and have a parenting do-over, one thing I would do is try to move from lecturing to listening so much more. So coming up with good questions where I ask things as opposed to a condescending of, so, do you like what you see here with that promiscuous, I mean, it's not this kind of almost, then you're not safe. There's
Right.
you're creating a fear of, well, I know what I'm supposed to answer, Jesus. They're not even thinking, as opposed to creating a safe place where you're asking them, hey, what do you think? And being able to get them to dialogue, so you can kind of, coach them a little bit, and also. We need to be, I can't emphasize more, we need to be sharing truth. This world is so full of ignorance. You mentioned pornification. The most recent Barna study, which is literally just a couple months ago, on porn, showed that about 68% of folks, and this is adults, kids, everything, regularly visit porn, have no problem. 68%. You think, well, with Christians, that's got to be a lot better. 54%.
Yeah.
So 54% for Christians. It's gone up since their 2016 study. For example, girls, it was in a 30-something%. Now it's 44% for females.
Well, it's inescapable. It's all around
Yeah,
us. The availability is just
But my point about this is, not only is it readily available, our mindset is changing, because one of the things that study found out is they asked them, well, how many of you guys think that this is harmful, or that there's a problem with this? And it was in the 60-something percentile that kind of said, this is kind of normal. It's okay. It's like no problem with it. So again, I would say, in a world so full of ignorance, we need truth, not to stamp out this, evil debauchery, so to speak, but I think more so to say, I think a young kid growing up is like, wow, I don't know why it is, but I talk to so many young guys. They're like, when I see a girl like that, or when I watch this video, or when I see this thing, there's something in me. I want that. What's wrong with that? And to be able to tell them, nothing's wrong with that. That's the way God made you. Let me tell you the context of that, and be able to explain how cool it is in the context of marriage, and when you're in that covenant, why it's so much better, and be able to share truth so they can dissect that for themselves.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think as parents, none of us want our kids to be exposed to stuff that's damaging, that's degrading. We don't want our kids, to watch an R-rated movie that has, hopefully we don't, that has a bunch of explicit content or pornography or that sort of thing. But I think the reality is that we've never been completely in control as parents, and we certainly aren't now, right? And the odds are pretty good that it's not if, but when your kids encounter something that we wish that they wouldn't have. My youngest daughter was at a sleepover with friends 2 weeks ago, and they watched an R-rated movie that had a bunch of sex in it. And she said, I just went in the other room. And
Yeah.
now she is strong and independent. Other kids might not do that. But I think that the two things we've tried to tell our kids is pay attention to your conscience, right? Because I can't brainstorm every possible circumstance you're ever going to be in. If that little voice inside of you says, I'm uncomfortable with this, listen to it.
Yeah.
And then just know that you can come and talk to us, and we're not going to, drop the hammer because you got exposed to something, or even if you've made the wrong choice. I've told my kids and my daughters, there may come a time when you make a really bad choice and you realize you need help. Please come talk to us.
Yeah.
We want to be in relationship with you to help you.
And those kinds of conversations, like you've had with your daughter, create a sense of counterculture approach, where suddenly she's balking a bit against the general culture that says, yes, this is all good, this is all good. And she's saying, wait a minute, maybe it's not so good for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I mean, the fact is teens like to rebel, so why not help them rebel against this sort of stuff?
And I can't emphasize much more. I can't emphasize more how great it is, Adam, that you're creating a climate where you're empowering your daughter to start making these decisions, because we're fools if we don't realize that by the time they're 18, they're going to be in a college dorm, they're going to be in an army barracks, they're going to be in their own apartment, if they want, making these decisions for themselves. And when they're 16 and 17, give them some practice. And I remember my daughter asking to go on a sleepover once, and she was like, I know you're going to say no, but that's how she asked it. And I remember her saying, yes, but, and saying, hey, I said, we just need to talk about it. And I asked her, I said, hey, what do you think some of the temptations you might, what do you think? I said, can we talk about it when we get back? And she did. She came back and she shared with me some of the things she experienced, and none of them were horrific, but we had this conversation. And I think she, in maybe one of my few good parenting moments, she was like, Dad's safe.
Well, and that is probably where we should end this conversation, right?
Yep.
The idea of safety. Parents should be a safe space to ask questions, to be able to talk about these things. So I think that what y'all are saying in some ways comes down to parents be willing to talk about this stuff and don't freak out. There are times when...
And I'd even put a small clarification. I don't, because I could see it in the comment section right now. Listeners, we value your opinions. Don't misunderstand it. We're saying, so let your kids do whatever they want.
No.
We're not saying that at all. We're saying that as they get older and they approach this, empower them to start making these decisions. Give them the truth so they can make these decisions. But man, there's still going to be things you're going to say that are no to. And we said that before. Like, you know what? Sorry, you're not going to have your phone in your bedroom all night.
Right.
There's going to be things like that.
Right. And I think that the one thing we have to be aware of is that your kids, if they feel that open door that they can talk with you about things, because these influences are everywhere, chances are your kids are going to have some questions, and they're going to be uncomfortable questions. When they ask you those questions, you need to be prepared to be able to push back against entertainment's influence, because those questions are inspired often by entertainment. Have a godly answer, have a family answer ready for them, and don't freak out. Thanks so much, guys.
You look lovely tonight, Marcia.
Why, thank you, George. My, what a charming restaurant this is. Real metal silverware and everything.
Nothing but the best for you, my dear. Plus, tonight, I wanted to give you something.
What are you getting down on one knee for? George, don't tell me.
Here, Marcia. I want you to have this.
Oh, George. Oh, George? What is this? The box looks bigger than I expected.
Just open it, my darling.
Why, it's a book.
Not just any book, Marcia. It's Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family by the Plugged In team.
I don't know what to say.
I know, right? It's just teeming with helpful advice on how you can manage screen time and how to raise your children in a media-saturated world. And wait! Did you just throw your copy of Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family into the fireplace?
It slipped.
Well, that's all right, my darling. You can always get yourself another copy by sending a gift of any amount to Plugged In. Just go to the Plugged In Show homepage and check out the show notes. They'll tell you just what to do.
I'll tell you just what to do.
Yeah.
So, Bob, a few years ago, I'm not sure if I was hearing this from just a terrible source, but I had heard that consoles were on the way out. Everything was going to be played on your phones.
Oh, yeah. Those silly people.
It doesn't seem like that's really the case,
Yeah.
judging
No,
from
no,
the
not at
games
all.
that are coming out, right?
Not at all, because I think gamers really enjoy a bit of depth in their games. And as the years have gone on, games have gotten more complex, more depth to the storyline, and you can't do that on a phone.
Yeah.
You just can't. I mean, phone games are fun, but they're more casual games.
Yeah. And it seems like we're having a lot more of those in-depth games being released earlier on in the year, which surprises me because I would have figured that a lot of them would have been released around Christmas time. February does not seem like an opportune time to release games, but there are a couple of them coming down the pipe, right?
Quite a few, actually, this spring. Especially February and March, there's a lot of new games, and we were talking about spending double the time on the previous segment. We could spend an entire podcast on this segment because there are so many different games that are coming out, and we can talk about several of them. I mean, one of the ones that shall we just dive in?
Yeah, let's just dive in. Give us a couple.
One of the ones that I'm looking forward to is the new Civilization 7, which some people really get into strategy games, and I'm one of them. And I think the Civilization games, this is a turn-based strategy game. Civilization games are so well constructed because some of these strategy games can be so deep with multiple levels and all these different menus, and you step into it for the first time and you go, what do I do? It's just way I'm in way over my head. Whereas the Civilization games, which don't actually need to be introduced. I mean, a lot of people know what they're all about. They're sort of like a simulation of history, and you're building a society. And they're really, really excellent games. And number 7 is coming out in February, and it's going to be
It's going to be
I'm
a huge game. It seems like when we're talking about from a plugged-in point of view, those Civ games, they're pretty navigable, except for some religious content, right?
Every once in a while, there's something in there, and that a lot of times it comes with the extensions. When they give you an extension to whatever that particular base model is, and they'll they'll throw in the environment, or they'll throw in religion, and they'll throw in different elements that can make it a little bit more problematic. But again, they're navigable.
Yeah. So is there a game coming out February or March that you're particularly, I wouldn't say scared of, but one that you're particularly interested in reviewing because you think parents would really need to know about it?
Well, there's going to be a couple of M-rated games, and the problem is that I think a lot of parents don't recognize that M-rated means there's going to probably be some problems in here.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of fairly big titles or big names that are recognizable. There's a new Assassin's Creed game coming out called Shadows, and this one takes place actually in Japan. If you know Assassin's Creed, it's all about assassins. And in this case, it's in Japan, and so you've got ninjas and you've got samurai, and people are really looking forward to that one. But it's probably going to be messy in spots.
Rated M for messy.
That's right.
Rated M for messy.
There's a couple of more that I'll mention. Avowed is another one, and this one is sort of it's a fantasy-focused RPG, and you mentioned Skyrim earlier. This has Skyrim elements to it. We haven't gotten it, so we can't fully review it. But it's going to have those Skyrim elements, and it's not like Skyrim is really messy, but there are some parts of that older game that can get pretty dark.
Can get bleed both.
And this one has, as I've heard, has some sexual elements in there too that parents should be aware of. Another one that's coming out is called Atom Fall. And this is this one takes a lot of cues from.
Sounds scary to me.
First part.
I don't know why you would say that.
Not Adam, but Atom.
Okay.
Atom Fall. It takes cues from the Fallout games, and if anybody knows the Fallout games, there are these games about dystopia after this major radioactive destruction of the world.
And they can get very messy.
Yeah,
indeed.
and very, very messy. And so those two you can keep an eye out for. One that would probably be end up positive. And again, I haven't reviewed it yet, but I've read about it. It's called Inzoi.
Inzoi.
And it's INZOI, capital Z. It's going to be like the next generation of Sims.
Oh, interesting.
And for Sims players, I mean, they're a devoted lot. And but they haven't really had a new Sims game since like 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And this Inzoi is hyper realistic with all these tools to create your Sims, like your own character in minute detail, and of course building the world around you. They've got all these tools, and it's supposed to be like, as I said, that next generation, something very very intricate things that a Sims player will really dig.
You bet. And down the
And,
road
and,
a
it
little
and
bit.
that should be rated maybe T, maybe even less, maybe even E10 plus.
Yeah, we'll just have to see
Yeah.
when you start reviewing it, what
That's
it
right.
looks like. So I also understand that down the road, we're going to be looking at another Grand Theft Auto game.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so curious about that.
There are some
Yeah.
big titles, and that's one of them. There hasn't been a Grand Theft Auto for a long time, and people have been begging for the next one. And Grand Theft Auto 6 is supposed to come out sometime this year, but you never know with games. The fact is, the reason we don't always say they're going to be here this year is because they change their release date and they push it back.
And from a non-gamer perspective, all the other Grand Theft Autos came out when I was knee deep in youth ministry, and I can just say with confidence that by far there was no other game that kids just got immersed in as much. I mean, every time one of those came out.
Yeah.
And you're talking about your youth group kids.
I'm talking about youth group kids. This is youth group kids, and I worked on campus with campus kids as well. But I'm telling you, more and more grandmas would give their kids this game for Christmas because they didn't know what rated M meant.
Yeah.
And I mean, the games are highly problematic. Always, there's never been one that wasn't highly problematic, and it's just amazing that all kids. It's like there isn't a kid that hasn't literally at least seen it. I mean, you try your most innocent homeschooled kid. That kid has been at a friend's house and this was back then, and has seen their friend play the game. It was just everybody having it.
These
It's
games
ubiquitous.
are rife with language and theft and sex. We were talking about sex in the previous segment. You can bet that this new one is going to have it.
And such a distortion of sex, like brutality, like make love to a prostitute. I can't even say make love. Have sex with a prostitute and then beat her when you're done with it. Beat her up or run her over.
It's really
terrible
It can
stuff.
be really horrific. We'll be playing through that
Definitely.
to let parents know
Definitely.
exactly what's going to be.
And just a couple of other quick ones. There's going to be a new Pokemon, or at least it's scheduled or slotted.
which will be much more family friendly than
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto.
But this one is this one takes place in the in that world of Arceus. I can't remember how it's pronounced.
Arceus.
But it's more of an RPG. It's not your typical gotta catch 'em all fare. It's a little bit more of an RPG. And then another one that's coming out that people should know about is a remake of Fable.
Yeah, I was interested in this
Fable was one of actually I really enjoyed the Fable game originally back when it first came out, but this is more of a moral choice game, and that's the thing I actually liked about the original Fable, where you make moral choices within the context of the game, and those moral choices shape how the people in the world around you relate to you.
Yeah.
And not only
And
that,
Bob?
but they change how you physically look. Yeah.
Bob, it was a pretty groundbreaking game when it came out, wasn't it?
It was.
The original one?
Yep. And so I think a lot of people are looking forward to this new one to see what they do with that.
Yeah. So this is sort of like a coming attractions little segment for
Yeah.
our reviews, because you're going to be reviewing all of those games.
We will indeed. And so come on in and see what we think.
All right. Good deal. Thanks so much, Bob.
Yep.
All right, and now we are joined in studio by our own Kennedy Unthank. Hello,
Surprise.
Kennedy. Hello.
Man, I'm
and we are
excited.
going to be doing a little segment we call
Pop Rumble!
So, Kennedy, can you explain how this works?
Yes, so I have 2 cups in front of me, and 1 cup will be your character, who you have chosen out of the cup. They will be a character from a famous movie, TV show, or video game. Once you tell me that you know who the character is, then I will draw an event in which they will be competing. You will be competing against the other players' characters and trying to explain why your character is uniquely situated in such a position to win that competition.
All
Like
right,
if
good deal.
Spider-Man was raking leaves or something
Oh
like that.
my goodness! No,
Is
we're
that
not
right?
going to go there. We're
Okay.
not going to go there. And
Again
Adam,
with the Spider-Man.
Just wanted to
Adam,
clarify.
I'm going to go ahead and pick for you, Adam. So as
Okay.
normal. So
All right, so here's Adam's.
this is Adam's. Okay. Mike Wachowski.
Mike Wazowski,
Mike Wazowski.
the green dude
Okay.
from Monsters, Inc.
He was the Billy Crystal
Put
character.
that
He
thing
was.
back where it came from. Put that. Yeah, that's right.
All right, now I'm
I
picking
think
for me.
Jonathan wants him.
No, that's okay.
You sound just
I
like
can't
him.
cheat.
This is a big. Okay, here we go.
This for you? Is this for you?
It is for me. I don't know the character, so I'm going to pick again because that's the kind of guy I am. But isn't that part of the
cheater?
rules if you don't know the
Yes,
character?
yeah.
Okay.
That would be really boring. if you didn't know.
Oh, Jack Bauer.
Oh, okay.
Jack
from
Bauer
I get
from
Mike
24.
Wazowski and you
that's-
get Jack
That's like a
Bauer.
long time. Send that puppy over here.
Boy.
Okay.
No puppies were hurt in the playing of this game.
Neo. So Matrix, right? Matrix? Is that what we're talking
yeah.
about? Okay,
Matrix.
cool. Do I put it back in or do I
man.
hold
No,
on?
you hold on to it.
I hold on to this.
All right, so here we
I
go.
want to revote.
All right.
So we've got.
So we have Mike
Mike
Wazowski, Neo from The Matrix, and Jack Bauer all competing in
Raking leaves, raking leaves.
beating an obviously rigged carnival game.
Okay.
All
beating
right.
an obviously.
Does anyone want to go
rigged
first?
carnival game? I'll go first.
Well, I want to go first.
No,
Oh, Paul does?
Adam, you can go first.
No,
Go.
I
okay,
want
fine.
to go first.
Adam, are you ready?
Yes.
Go.
Well, Mike's going to be able to do it because, number one, he has super long arms. So if it involves throwing, you know he wins. Also, he's got one giant eye. And I don't care what those other guys do. He's going to be able to see how it is being rigged. And if they push back at all, he's going to come back with not a gun or shooting somebody, but a clever, situation appropriate quip about why you're ripping people off. I think Mike Wazowski is our winner.
That was pretty all right.
That was better than I thought Mike Wazowski
Yeah,
would be.
yeah, I would
bet.
agree with that.
You,
Yeah.
you actually have some stiff competition.
Yes, good job, Mike.
All right, well,
And
Paul,
Adam.
Right?
since you so desperately wanted to go first, I'll let you go second.
Oh,
Right?
thank you very much. All right, here we go.
Ready?
I'm
Go.
ready. So Jack Bauer is going to beat this obviously rigged carnival game because he is going to be there for 24 hours playing it. Number one. And number two, like when he sees some sort of weakness in the carnival guy, he's going to leap over the stand and he's going to say, "I am going to break your arms unless you tell me how this is rigged." And because it's Jack Bauer, anytime he threatens anybody, it totally works. So because he is Jack Bauer,
because I think it was so apropos that we heard the ticking clock during Jack Bauer. So it would have been better if it was even like doot doot doot.
Paul,
doot. Yeah, that's good.
I begrudgingly have to say the 24-hour thing was pretty good.
That was good.
I do
Just
like
wear
how
'em down.
the
Just wear 'em down.
strategy is just if you just stay there long enough.
If you stay there long enough, that's cool.
Why is Kiefer Sutherland still here?
still
okay,
here.
you win.
He's still throwing at those little balls.
Just take the elephant.
Yeah.
Just take the elephant. That's awesome.
All right, Jonathan. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Sure.
Go.
Well, first of all, Neo would do it because it's Keanu Reeves. Say no more. Second of all, nobody else, when they
Whoa.
miss, ever go, whoa. Thirdly, he's wearing a huge overcoat so he can grab whatever weapons he wants, which leads to my fourth one, which is he has so many weapons that he can use for this carnival game. Fourthly,
For this
he's in
carnival
the
game.
Matrix. He's in the Matrix, so he can just like do it as many times as he wants. He can like retake the red pill or the blue pill. He can use that. Also, if something came back at him, he could just lean back and do the thing like this,
What carnivals are you going to where the things are flying back at you?
The little duckies going down the little road. They don't fly at you.
He's
They
like,
don't fly at you. And you would be totally disqualified.
When you shoot them as much as Neo does, they do fly back at
Oh
you because
my
they're flying all over the place.
goodness. And,
oh wow,
I don't know.
ducky time.
Well, you know what?
Ducky time.
Because I get to be the final judge on this game, I gotta say, as much as I really liked Adam with Mike Wazowski doing with the eye and with
the eye was
with the
good.
quip and
The eye
everything,
was
good.
I gotta give it to Paul, merely because of the I really loved how you incorporated the actual lore of the storyline into your answer. That was
It
masterful.
sounds like this one isn't quality. I mean, isn't quantity. This one's definitely quality. Here.
Exactly.
It
which-
is. See, I was going for quantity again.
Yeah.
Like our
Well,
old
good
game.
You
try,
misunderstood
Jonathan.
the game.
Now, it's good
I'm
to
just
know the
saying,
rules
goodness.
after the game.
Yeah, that
This
is good
is-
to know. If I would have known it was a vote, I would have thought a lot more about this instead of just trying to get a bunch of dumb ones.
So I feel really good that I actually beat you in one of these games, Jonathan,
It is
when you're
good.
actually here in the studio.
Hey,
So thank you.
Jonathan.
When it's quality, I will never win.
Ain't that the truth? No.
So, can I have something to say.
Yes.
Please.
I just had this image of Neo like at a carnival game, like losing, and he just gets out his guns and starts shooting everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's-
Or he goes.
That actually warmed my heart in
Or-
a
or
dark
he goes,
kind of way.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I kind of just imagine he'd go back to that like computer where he can learn whatever skill he wants.
Exactly, and go. He puts in a little disc. And, yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I tell you
Upload.
what an interesting podcast this has been. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for listening, for watching. We really appreciate your attention. We really appreciate your time. And of course, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear about your experience with video games. We'd love to hear how your favorite character would deal with a rigged carnival game. We would love to hear your thoughts on how you talk to your kids about sex and entertainment. It's a really important topic that we need to take really, really seriously. Let us know your thoughts. If you have advice for other parents, be sure to let them know as well. Chime in on Facebook, Instagram. Leave us a voicemail on the Plugged In Show homepage. Write us a message at team@thepluggedinshow.com, or just post a little comment on our blog. And be sure to join us next time on the Plugged In Show.